um, something else I'm desperate to ask you is, when you get to 83 books, and will be more beyond and above, when you have so many universes that you've created, so many characters that you spent so much time with, do you still feel all of them with you? Not all the time, but do you still remember them, think of them, or do they go into the past?
Worse, I forget them. I'm visiting a school, I'm doing a Skype with the school, they're reading a book I wrote 20 years ago, and they say, on page 16, you said, and I'm thinking, did I? I don't remember that. Or they'll say, this character, where'd you get the idea from? And I'm not even remembering the character. So it takes me a while to, wait a minute, that's the book I wrote. Then I'm trying to remember. And sometimes I'll say to a student, which is true, believe it or not, you know this book better than I do, because you just read it. I haven't read it in 20 years. And that happens. And they give me this sort of baffled look. How could you forget? But you do. I do. I really do.
And since you're writing intuitively when you're starting a new project, and you've already signed some contract of some form, spent the money, so it's definitely going to happen. How much of that determines the parameters of what you're going to write? How much do you have down for someone to purchase before you get going?
Okay. I'll give you an example. And please don't think I'm bragging or something, but I was talking to the editor who did Gold Rush Girl, and a friend of mine read the book and said, I can't wait for the sequel. End of the book, you've read it, the kids go off at the end, right? He said, I want to know what happens to them. I hadn't even thought about that. And so I was having some communication with the editor, and actually she was saying, the book has just come in bound. I'm sending you a copy. It looks really good. Let me know what you think about it. So I said, okay, happy to. Oh, by the way, do you want a sequel? She writes back, we're doing all this by email. Yeah, I think I would. What would it be about? Well, tell us what happened to the kids. I need more than that before I go to my publisher. Can you give me a synopsis of the story? Okay. So I sit down and write, and 15 minutes later, I send it to her. She said, oh, that sounds good. Does it have a title? I don't know. Well, I need one. I give her a title. Oh, good. You could use that. Fine. I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks and see if we want to do this. Boom. There you go. Have I thought out the story? No. Do I know the general idea? Yes. I'm thinking, well, if I do that, I'm going to have to move to California for a month or two to write this book. Well, I mean, this is all within 10, 15 minutes of talk. That's not exactly careful planning of my life, is it? So much less of a book. But
it's working out.
Well, on the other hand, I'm working on a book, and I did think it out carefully. I submitted it to a publisher, and they said, well, we're sort of interested, but only if you told the story this way, which was not a way I wanted to work. So I just took it to another publisher, and she was editor, and she was intrigued. Well, how would you deal with this issue? I told her. She said, okay, let me think about it. And that one took a lot of discussion because it's a complicated subject, but sometimes more, sometimes less. Some ideas are simple. Some ideas are very complicated.
Do you have any sense about what attracts you to a particular project versus another?
It's a perfectly valid question, of which I have not a valid answer.
Fair enough.
I mean, something has to be intriguing about it. The worst, Robert, is when you agree to a book and then you're called upon to actually produce it 2 years later, and you're thinking, what in the world made me interested in this? That happens. That's no fun. But usually, I don't know, there's a story that I just think would be fun, that would be interesting to tell. I don't think it's more than that. The idea of the story is what attracts me, but that's not the story. One of the questions that people often ask, you're a writer, they'll use this word, they'll say, what inspired you to do such and such a thing? They use that word inspire. And I'd like to point out to folks that the word inspire is not, as it's come to mean, sort of the finger of God touching your brain. When you inspired, it really means putting life into something. So to me, to be inspired is to have an idea which is easy, but then I have to bring it to life. That's what inspiration is all about. And that's my job as a writer, to do exactly that. And sometimes I do it better than other times. But that's the work. That's the job of the writer, to give life, not to the idea. It's not the idea that's crucial. It's the life that engages with people.
I've definitely got to come back. Unpack that just a little bit for me, because I'm getting too far ahead of myself. I've got 3 more questions for you on the back of what you said. What does that mean? It's the life that inspires the word. How does that show itself?
My readers have to care. I after many years, people have said, what makes children's books different than adult books? And I've come up with an answer. I don't know if other people have, but it's a little different than I might have said 20 years ago. I think it's the way kids read books that constitute children's books. They are so fully absorbed in a book. They're so much engaged with it. They take the experience of the book and make it their own. And I think adults can do that and sometimes do that. But I think kids read in this all-absorbing way. I'll tell you a story about this with one of my own kids that I love to tell because it's exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know how old he was, 7 or 8, and I used to read to my kids all the time. And I was reading the Nesbitt book, The Would-Be Goods. And this is a story, if you don't know it, about Edwardian kids written at that time. It's a family. The mother has died. The father tries to raise his 5 kids. But these kids try to take over their lives. And they get into mischief. I mean, it's fun book. And there was one character named Oswald, who the oldest, but he was always getting into trouble. I mean, you can see the plot of this book, not terribly deep and not terribly important. But anyway, I was reading this to my son, and he loved it. He loved it. And by this time I was writing, and he had seen that I was getting letters from kids. And he says to me one night after we finished the reading, he said, Dad, I really like this book. I said, can I write to the author? And I said, Kevin, it's his name. I said, that's a great idea, but unfortunately she died some time ago. He sat bolt up in his bed. He said, that's impossible. What do you mean? He said, she knows so much about me. And I had no idea what he was talking about. I mean, the characters in the book had nothing that I saw about him. These Edwardian English kids. We're in the middle of Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania. But he identified so much. This was about him. And I thought, what an extraordinary gift this writer had, that she leaped across the ages, so to speak, and he made this book about him. I loved that. I absolutely love that. And I think that's the way kids read at their best. And that's different. And what I hope is that my readers care when they read The Gold Rush Girl, I want them to care about the girl. Is she going to succeed in doing what she has to do? She wants to go to California. How is she going to get to California? She hates her life on the East Coast. I hate that life on the East Coast. I want them to be right there with her and take the same journey that she does. And if I do that, then I've succeeded. If they don't come along with her, I haven't. It's as simple as that.
Have you got some tried and true means to get readers to care about your characters?
I have to care. If I don't care, they won't care. And I don't have a method. I just have the intuition, this works, this doesn't. And I'm a totally untheoretical writer, I'm afraid.
No, I want you to tell me the secret.
The secret is there's no secret.